everyone, my name is Surina Taneja. I am a junior doctor working in the UK and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome to it for the first time. I'm currently an F2 doctor, so in my second year of training, and I'm now having a think about whether I want to apply for further training or take a year out. I'm trying to put together my portfolio for possibly applying for surgical training, and only recently have I looked through the portfolio requirements and realised that I've not really done anything ever since I started working that would contribute meaningfully. While you're working as a doctor, it's almost impossible to find time to do all of these things, or rather I think there was a lot more flexibility with your time when you're a medical student. So I thought I'd do a video about what kind of things I did do at medical school to help me build my portfolio, things that I'm really relying on heavily now, quite a few years later, and hopefully they can help some of you watching it. So 2 disclaimers before we start. Firstly, this advice is not limited to medical school. Like I said, on reflection, I've just found there's a lot more freedom to pursue all these extracurricular things when you're at university compared to when you start working. You can obviously use these tips at any stage of your career in medicine, but most of the opportunities I talk about are for medical students in particular. And secondly, very importantly, is that you do not need to do any of these things while you're at medical school. Just getting through the degree is quite a feat in itself, and you should concentrate on that. But if you have a little bit of reserve, a bit of free time, and you're interested in an academic career, then I think it's a really good time to boost your portfolio a bit. Alright, so first things first, why should you build a medical portfolio? Firstly, it's very simple. You get points for all of these achievements, and these points set you apart from other candidates when you're applying for further jobs. If you want a higher chance of getting the job you want or the location you want, especially in more competitive specialities and locations, then you need these points to stand out. So it's a good idea to get started early. Secondly, if you have a special interest or you're interested in a few things in terms of a few specialities, a few careers that you might be thinking of in the future, then doing all these extracurricular things is such a good way to explore them more, to build contacts, to network, to contribute to research, to make a difference. So it's a really good experience aside from the whole competitive points nature of it. So I would recommend it if you are able to do any of these things, to give it a go. Alright, so second big question is, what should you include in your medical portfolio? Broadly speaking, I'd say there are 4 main categories that feature in most portfolios. Number 1, academia, of course. Number 2, research. And in that, I'm going to include prizes as well in this video. Number 3 is medical education. And number 4 is sort of leadership and management side of things. I'll be giving you some really easy, reproducible steps that you can take to sort of tick some of the boxes in these categories quite easily. Okay, so number 1 is academia. I'm sure that if you're a medic or if you know someone who is, you know how aggressively academic the whole vibe is. And I wonder why that is. How about because from the moment you start, you're constantly ranked against each other and put in order of how well you did in exams, so you start to equate your self-worth to how intelligent you are compared to your peers, and then harbours feelings of resentment, and you realise your overachieving self will never be able to produce results that are good enough. It's a problematic vibe, I know, but that's for a whole nother video. And in all seriousness, if you are doing really well in your medical school exams and coming in the top 10-20%, congratulations, and make sure you hold on to those prizes and certificates to use for applications later on to make up for your lack of personality. Damn! Who said that? For the rest of us, fear not, I'll be going through a whole host of other types of prizes that are up for grabs for anyone. Number 2, research and prizes. So this is a really big section, and we'll be covering things like posters, papers, presentations, but I've included prizes as well because a lot of them are linked to your research projects you might be doing. Okay, the first part of this section is about additional degrees, so things like a BSc or an MB-PhD or a master's. At my university it was compulsory to do a BSc. I know it's only compulsory in a handful of universities, but in a lot more it is optional, and if you do have the opportunity to apply for it, then absolutely go for it. The key thing with research in medical school and beyond is a big component of it is luck. You need to be in the right place at the right time, meet the right supervisor. It's quite tough sometimes to figure out these opportunities by yourself. And when something relies so heavily on luck, I think the best way to tackle it is to increase the surface area on which these moments of luck might happen. And I think doing another degree, such as a BSc, is one of the best ways to do that. But why, I hear you ask? Well, when doing a BSc, most likely you'll be thrust into the world of research, so you'll be forced to meet supervisors and come into contact with other students who are doing projects, and through that way you'll probably find yourself doing a project as well. Even if you don't do any project or get any tangible outcomes from your BSc, the very minimum, just doing it and passing it counts as points on your portfolio as well. And if it's an opportunity that you can seek out, then I absolutely would recommend it. Okay, so the next part is about other routes into research, because I know not all of you will have the opportunity to be doing additional degrees like a BSc, but I know all of you will be coming into contact with lots of doctors, especially on your clinical placements, and there's a good chance that a lot of them are working on various different projects that you can help out with, but you're never going to find out unless you ask. Something that I did and something that I would advise is, next time you're sitting in clinic and there's a lull between patients or the ward rounds come to an end, I would try and always ask at the end whether there are any projects that the doctor's involved with and whether you can help. And a lot of the times the answer might be no, or in my case sometimes the answers were quite vague. Every now and then it could lead to something, and the doctor might say, yes, actually I'm doing this audit, or I'm collecting this data, would you like to help? But a big word of warning, make sure you understand what you're signing up to. I know there's so many of my colleagues and peers who've ended up becoming basically data monkeys, collecting tons and tons of data, which takes up a lot of time, and it not actually resulting in anything, which is such a shame and such a waste. So make sure you do ask, what will this involve? How many patients do we need to collect data for? What are we working towards? So are we preparing this for something? Is there a presentation or a paper on the horizon? How likely is it to actually happen? Really do your research. Don't just think you have to say yes to any opportunity that comes your way, because this is your time you're offering. Okay, so you found yourself a research project. What next? And what I'm going to talk to you about next is really how to draw out all those tangible benefits from your research project to make sure you get the most out of all the hard work that you have put in. So, in other words, how to really milk that research. There are, I think, basically 3 things you can do with that research. One is to present it, and that can be in an oral presentation or in a poster form. The other is to write it up into a publication, and the third would be to submit it for some prizes. Now, publications are notoriously difficult to get. It's a long process that can take months and even up to years, so it shouldn't really be the primary aim of what you're trying to get out of your research, especially at medical school. It's not impossible, but the point of this video is to give you some very doable and practical tips that basically anyone can do. So I'm not going to talk about publication too much, although if you stick around till the end of this section, I do have a publication hack that basically anyone can do, but we'll talk about that later. So I'm going to mainly focus on posters, presentations and prizes. So I'm going to need my laptop for that. I'll be right back. So the first port of call in terms of working out what to do with your research should be your supervisor, because hopefully they'll have the best idea of which conferences are relevant to your research and where it's likely to be accepted. But if your supervisor's, away or not very reliable, or you're working on something independently, then fear not, because there are tons of opportunities that you can find out for yourself. And I'll show you the places that I looked at. So my favourite place to start is the Royal Society of Medicine. So I've just typed in RSM student prizes. Oh, what's happening here? Okay, RSM student prizes, and if I take you to their page, so this is the page where all the prizes for the students are. So you can see all these happy people, none of them who look like students actually. But anyway, this page has upgraded since I used to look at it regularly as a student. Looks a lot nicer now. If you just scroll down, you can see there are prizes for absolutely any interest you have. So whether it's clinical, so things like anesthesia, cardiothoracics, but also up here we've got an elective award, if electives are still happening, I don't know. Clinical immunology, neurosciences, you get the idea. You could just keep scrolling. These are calls for prizes for things like a research project, which you might already have done. But the beauty is some of these are sort of self-containing projects, so you don't need to have some research ready to go. Some of these are like essays, so they've given you example titles that you can write an essay for, or they've given you a brief of something to come up with. So yeah, I really recommend checking this out. There's tons of prizes. I'm still scrolling, we're not at the end. And I'm sure there'll be something there that you can submit. Another amazing thing is that you can pretty much just type in anything like hematology student prize, and just replace the word hematology with pretty much any speciality, and there you go. We've got prizes coming up mainly for medical students, and that's another reason why I think medical school is such a good time to do these things. Okay, so here is the website. There's all the awards and prizes. I don't know what all of this is, but here we go. Here is the student essay prize. So it says the title will be announced in the autumn. Pretty sure it's autumn now, so hopefully that's coming soon. And yeah, here we go. The prizes are £500, £250, so there's money up for grabs sometimes, as well as the portfolio points, so that's an added bonus. And you can just sort of get on with this in your spare time, do a bit of research, learn a bit more about something that you enjoy. Like I said, you can literally type in anything and then add a student prize at the end. Oh, it's really hard to type with one hand. So let's see what comes up with neurology. So here we go, the British Neuroscience Association. They've got prizes coming. I'm not going to go through them in too much detail, but you get the point. So Royal Society of Medicine, and insert speciality name here plus student prize, and you'll find tons of things going on. The prizes range from all sorts of things. They don't have to be, research and essays that can take from days to weeks to months. And I want to show you an example that I did. So here is this Discover GP competition that I submitted to in 2018, and the brief was something along the lines of creating a teaching session for primary school children to teach them about the role of a GP and what a career in general practice is like. I literally spent like a day or two putting this game together, and here it is. We called it the Discover GP Workshop, and we had to include a lesson plan, which we did, and then basically we just created a game called Whose Hat Is That? And the premise was that the students, or the children, are given all of these cards which have all the different specialities on it, and we've created different hats on each of them. Yeah, this took about 2 days to do, maybe less, and we ended up winning first prize of this national competition. It's not particularly academic, or you don't particularly need a supervisor or anyone to oversee this. You can get on with it in your own time, and then you've ticked another box in your portfolio. So I thought that was a good one to show you. Check out all of those websites. I'm sure you'll find even more once you start looking, and try and submit a few things. Don't worry if it doesn't get accepted. There was a piece of work I did in radiology, and I submitted it as an essay, which didn't get selected or shortlisted at all. But then I reformatted it as a poster presentation, like a case study presentation of a fairly rare disease, and submitted it to a conference where it got accepted as a poster. So all the hard work was already done. I didn't have to put any extra work in, but just sort of reformatting it, I managed to get something out of it in the end. The last bit in this research segment I wanted to talk about was about publications. Like I've already mentioned, they usually take a lot of time, and it's not really something you can do independently, but there is a simple way that you can get published. It'll give you a PubMed ID, and you can search for it on PubMed, so definitely worth doing. And that is to write a letter. When you look at any journals online, you'll see usually at the beginning there is a section for letters, usually letters to the editor, where people have commented on a topic that they find interesting or something they want to discuss, or they might be replying to a previously published article, giving their own opinion. And that gets published in the journal, and is a publication in its own right. And as you can probably guess, it takes way less time and commitment and effort than an actual scientific paper will. So what we did was look up some medical education journals, because that's a really easy thing to talk about as a medical student. At the time, we were doing our sexual health module, and we wrote a letter about how the skill of taking sexual health histories can be improved, and we used various techniques that we found in the literature as suggestions for creating a good curriculum. And yeah, that got published, and I can show it to you here. Okay, so here it is, a medical student perspective on sexual history taking, doing it for the first time. I don't know, I think we thought a quirky title might make it more likely to be accepted. Guess it worked. So yeah, this is a journal called Medical Education Online. It's searchable on PubMed. We've got the PubMed ID. It's pretty short, actually. That's it. Just a few paragraphs, 5 or 6 references. Again, this took about a day or two. And if it's something you're interested in, like medical education is one of my interests anyway, then all the better. You can learn from it as well. But I'm not going to try and dress it up too much. Basically, it's just a hack to get some points on your portfolio. Might as well give it a go. Why not? Go write a letter. Okay, so next section is medical education, which is a great section that you can easily get involved with at medical school, because you're being taught all the time, and you also have the power to teach, especially after first year when you've got students younger than you. So make sure you get involved with teaching. That can be seminars, lectures. You could organise those through your societies that you're part of. You could advertise on your Facebook groups or directly through your friends. The most important thing is to make sure you get feedback, because when it gets to portfolio stage, you'll need to not only have done some teaching, but be able to demonstrate evidence that you have taught and that you are a good teacher. So make sure you're collecting feedback for every bit of teaching you do. And it's so easy now with Google Forms. You can have somewhere that collects all your feedback and stores it, but also can process the data and create really nice looking pie charts and bar charts to show visually what a good teacher you are. So make sure you do that. And another tip I would advise, to try and get in touch with your education faculty, the people who are organising and designing your medical school curriculum, and who better to advise than the students who are actually training at the medical school. So your input would be really valuable, and I'm sure the faculty will be keen to get you involved if you are interested. So try and get in touch with them. And medical education is its own, pot of research. You can get the same things like posters, presentations, publications from medical education research, and arguably they are a lot more resource and time less intensive than scientific papers, for example. So you're much more likely to be able to get tangible things out of these projects. So definitely get involved. Okay, and finally we're at the last section that I wanted to address, and that is leadership and management. So what that basically means is holding any sort of leadership role. It could be in the societies that you're part of. So if you sign up to be on the committees, that will count as leadership. You can apply to be student reps or module reps at your university. If you want to level that up to sort of regional or national leadership positions, I always see emails floating around from the BMA if you want to be their regional rep or national rep. I think the GMC also has similar positions for medical students, so definitely check those out. A few bits of closing advice that I would like to end with. Firstly, I've already mentioned this, but there is a lot of luck involved with all of these things, so don't get too disheartened if some work doesn't end up where you wanted it to. Just diversify your outlets, try lots of things, and hopefully something will work out. Secondly, everyone gets very fixated, or at least when I was at medical school, everyone was very fixated on publications. I would very much advise using all of that energy to try and get all of the other things I've mentioned today, because they are a lot more doable and a lot more achievable. If you look at the statistics for foundation applications and academic foundation applications, you'll see that there's such a tiny proportion of people who actually even have one publication. It's just that you probably hear those people talking about them a lot, so it feels like everyone has them, but that's not the case. Obviously aim high, but also be realistic with your goals. Thirdly, I've also touched on this before, but I again want to emphasize it, is that the number one priority when you're at medical school and when you're a doctor is to be a safe and competent doctor and be able to manage your clinical competencies. So everything extra is just extra. By no means do they replace all the work that you should be putting into being a good doctor and passing your exams. The last thing I wanted to mention is that if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together, I think. The phrase is something to that effect, but what I'm trying to say is it's really good if you can buddy up with someone to do all of these projects, because you'll find that data collection is a lot quicker, meeting deadlines is a lot easier if you've got someone who you are sort of accountable with and keeping an eye on these things as well. So definitely try and buddy up with someone who you can do these projects with. And that's everything. One last thing before I go, I'm actually doing the academic foundation program, and for that there is a bit more of an extensive point system compared to the foundation program, and that's what kind of spurred me on to start working on my portfolio in medical school. If you are also interested in the AFP, thinking about applying, or perhaps you've already applied and you've got hoping for some interviews, then another project I'm working on is with MedIQ Education. We are offering AFP mentoring, so we've already done 4 webinars which are looking at the whole application process and how to write your written applications, but we are also now about to launch our interview side of the course, which is going through all the interview skills you need. So do go check us out on mediqeducation.com. Also, feel free to message me down below or through my Instagram as well. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions about medical school, about your portfolio, about an academic career, or just about life or anything really. So yeah, look forward to hearing from you. Hope you found this useful, and goodbye. Hello everyone, I'm a junior doctor working in the UK. Especially if you're interested. I already said that. I'll be giving you some practical believe. Really try and elevate that into submitting it somewhere for a poster or blah blah blah, but I'm not going to include this.